Well, welcome to another episode of the Hector Mike Experience, Common Sense in an Uncommon World. Mike, we've got quite a bit of information, quite a bit of news happening. We just saw the latest polling reports for President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, and they seem to be in the toilet right now. What's your take on this?
Maybe common sense is taking over in the country since their numbers are so low. Sometimes you see with politicians, their numbers are low, and you ask, how can that be? What did they do wrong and stuff like that? In this particular case, I think it's not any one thing. It's just a preponderance of things for each of them. Let's start with Kamala Harris. Who would have longed for the days of Dan Quayle, being the example of the vice president? I remember when George Herbert Walker Bush, President Bush, named him the vice presidential nominee, and everybody went crazy, and then everybody made fun of him. And despite all of that, his numbers never sank so low. So you really have to, when you're the vice president. I don't even think Spiro Agnew's numbers to go way back, and that's when guy that got indicted, for Pete's sake. I don't think his numbers ever went that low. So you really gotta go low to get low. It's no longer, when they go high, when they go low, we go high. This is like when he goes low, she goes lower. And it's pretty amazing. And I think it's just a preponderance of things on both sides of the spectrum. I think with Kamala Harris, it's important to note it's both sides of the spectrum. You don't get that low in numbers just because the opposite party doesn't like you or doesn't think you're doing a good job. You get low on those numbers when your own segment of your own party feels that way. And I think that's what you have with her. They feel betrayed on a number of things, including immigration. And including, I think, in terms of, being the champion of women and what happened in Afghanistan and the fact that she's basically disappeared. So that's, I think, her thing. With Joe, it's everything. It's everything from policy and substance to style to perception to, what may be or may not be real in terms of his health. But I think, just to focus on the policy stuff, huge failure in Afghanistan. American service people were killed. A year ago at this time, gas prices were about $1.87. Now most places they're over $3. California, more and more often, as I drove this morning, you see the first number is a 5. So those kinds of things, shortage of goods, shortage of products, businesses not getting enough workers. I think all of those things are a preponderance of the fact that right now Americans don't feel comfortable the direction the country is going. I think we see it in some of the recent elections a few weeks ago. They think it's pretty badly off the rails, and they want someone to lead. And what's interesting is that they really have lost. I don't know if Trump's numbers were ever that low. And for Pete's sake, he not only had the Democrats going after him, but he had the media going after him. And so, these guys got a long way to go. And if you're sitting there as a Republican candidate for Congress or the Senate in 2022, you're measuring for your new suit, I think, unless you really screw it up.
Well, I agree with you in a lot of aspects. I think with Kamala, she screwed up the immigration, which I think there's another caveat of immigration, which is going to get worse for them, which I'll go into in a little bit. But with President Joe Biden, it's just been one misstep after another. The thing I found most interesting in this USA poll was the number of Democrats who are now saying that Joe Biden shouldn't run for re-election. Normally, you would have the numbers of people asking, within your own party saying you should run for re-election in the 90s. Here, you've got, a lot lower individual. I think there's 60-some% that said, that want him to run for re-election. That means there's a good number of Democrats and a larger number of independents who don't believe he should run for re-election, which basically means that they don't think he's a good leader. at this point in time. And he's still, we still have another 3 years with him, or 2 years, 2.5 years with him. And so the infrastructure situation that just happened, the infrastructure bill that just got passed by Congress, is now making its way over to the president. I think a lot of that just was delayed too long. We are now going into Thanksgiving time, then we're going into Christmas time. This is when people don't really pay attention to politics as much. This is when they're, focused on their family. But
Right.
the problem that he's facing right now is people aren't necessarily focused on their family. They're focused on, I need to buy my turkey early because if not, it's not going to be there. They're focused on all the other condiments and ingredients that get there. Are they going to be at the store or not? Should I go and order my Christmas gifts now? I mean, these are discussions I'm having, within my own family. Is like, okay, what do we get for the girls? Do we order them now or not? This is nothing I don't remember ever having this discussion this early, except when I was a little kid and we had to buy my parents had to buy our Christmas toys on layaway. And so you had to get them early to put them on layaway to be able to get them. But I mean, aside from that, the gas prices, the situation that happened in Afghanistan. Yes, at the same time, it's is he falling asleep at certain meetings? Is he not? And then you've got this inflation, the cost of goods, homeless situation, rising crime, and everything just puts one thing after another. And to get this infrastructure bill passed so late, I mean, how do they go and sell it now that everyone's focused on the holidays, and the focus on the holidays is on the price point?
Right.
And Mike, I think the other big situation that's really going to come down, and this kind of just mentioned a little bit, is a situation of illegal immigration. I mean, a lot of those immigrants coming in from Haiti and Latin America, they didn't just come when he was, president. They were there in Mexico waiting to see if Joe Biden was going to become president or someone else besides Donald Trump. And once that happened, you've got people like Gavin Newsom, you've got people like Joe Biden who said, you know what, we welcome you in. Come on in. So all of a sudden, you got 50 to 100,000 people ready to cross in the border. Now you've got this interesting news, and I'll let you kind of talk about it as to what's going to happen with immigration. And I don't believe that many people here in the United States are going to be very happy with the situation.
I would certainly hope not. But let me go back for a second before we talk about the tsunami that's coming of negativity for the Biden administration on illegal immigration. What you just described a few minutes ago about the holidays and Christmas, it's going to be more like Festivus. When everybody gets together, because remember, last year a lot of people didn't get together with their families because of COVID.
Right.
When people get together this year at Thanksgiving and at Christmas and Hanukkah, and they're going to, what's the conversation around the table? Is it going to be, are you starting your new business? How's work going? Is it going to be, do we wear a mask, not wear a mask? Is it going to be, God, I can't believe how bad the gas prices are. I can't believe, on the East Coast anyway, not necessarily here, it's going to be, can you believe the price of home heating oil, what it's going to cost me to heat my house? It's going to be, I've been trying to look for a new car and I can't find one I can afford because there are not enough cars out there. It's going to be, geez, I was going to go travel, but I went to the airport and there were no pilots because they were taking a time out because they don't want to get vaccinated. I mean, that's what's going to be the discussion around the Christmas table, the Hanukkah table. That's what's going to be the discussion around the turkey if you can find one. So what happens is that kind of feeds itself right there about, even if it's not as bad as it is, and by the way, it is as bad as it is, just that perception of people getting together for the first time in a long time, not having done it last year, but now doing it because of COVID, this year being able to do it, it's just going to reinforce itself. It's like a self-eating beast, and it's going to get worse. Now, let's talk about immigration, because this is why Joe Biden's numbers are in the toilet. This is why Kamala Harris's numbers are in the toilet. So the ACLU, files a lawsuit against the United States government and says that we need to pay, and let's use the word for what it is. Let's use the word for what it is, reparations. We have to pay reparations as a government, and the taxpayers. Remember, government doesn't make money, taxpayers make money, and they pay taxes to the government. Taxpayers are going to have to pay reparations to illegal immigrants who were separated from their children when they illegally crossed the border. And as you said, these people didn't just get airlifted into Mexico. They've been there for a while waiting to see what the policy was going to be. So, a couple of years ago when they decided to stream the border, and you had the chaos that was there, you had a president who was very strong on the border, and he said, you know what? Basically, if the parents of these kids are not parents enough to be able to bring them in safely and have this kind of chaos, there was the separation of the families, and people went crazy over it, even though it had been an existing policy under Obama, by the way, and all the places they put these kids had been built under the Obama administration. But now what's happened is the ACLU is suing the United States government for mental cruelty, because the families were separated. And so what the U.S. government is talking about proposing to settle this lawsuit or these lawsuits is to give every illegal immigrant who was in that situation $450,000 as a payment, and I call it a reward for illegal behavior. Now, that in and of itself, giving taxpayer money when we're paying $5 for gas, more money for everything on the grocery shelves, and all the other expenses that we have, giving $450,000 to reward someone for breaking the law and coming into this country is going to make people become outraged. But think of it in this perspective. This administration is willing to give $450,000 for illegal immigrants who were separated from their kids. So that means, husband and wife, they get $900,000. If you are a family member, the wife of, or the husband of a military person who was killed in action, for example, one of the 13 military folks that were killed in Biden's Afghanistan craziness, that family gets $400,000. That number right there, just the fact that this administration is saying we're going to give more money to illegal immigrants who came across the border than we do to families of our fallen soldiers, men and women, is the kind of thing that even if you think something should be done for these illegal immigrants, even if you're to that left of the spectrum that you think something should be done, there's still an outrage over the fact that you're giving them more than you're giving to the families of service members who gave their life for our country. That's why their numbers are in the toilet. Because it's not just that they've gone to the left, they've gone so far to the left that even some people in the left can't take it anymore.
But the thing is, there's a lot of folks that sent their kids by themselves that got to the border and realized that as long as their children were able to get across the border, they could get to a family member, and then eventually there'd be some sort of family reunification. And and that was a strategy that was used by some undocumented immigrants who basically, got to the border, got some coyotes, and said, "Hey, can you take my kid or my children, get them there?" Said they came by themselves, so they can so they can go to family members in the United States, and then the parents would come in and say, "I need some sort of reunification with my children." And under the Obama administration, a lot of that was happening. Mm-hmm. Under the Obama administration, they were being processed at the border and released. It was a catch and release. Right. I know under the Trump administration, it wasn't. It was a catch and deport. Yeah, catch and return. And so it seems, the amount of money seems itself to be an absurdity of it. And for this administration, at the end of the day, just to look to settle. I know I've seen numbers. It's talk about $450,000 to about $1 million, and maybe it's it's been settled a little bit more to $450,000. But that is a lot. That is a lot of money, and that is, I'd like to get to see the details of who gets this money, under what parameters, like I said, if the parents brought their kids here and they were given over and said later on there was a reunification, and okay, I'm separated from my child, do I get $450,000?
Right.
It's
What happened was the ACLU came in and said we want $1 million per parent, and the U.S. government came back and said no. Instead, we'll give you $450,000 per parent, as opposed to saying go to hell. These people broke the law. These people came when they shouldn't have come. They put their children at risk. Like you said, they turned them over to coyotes to come across the border. We're not going to pay you any money, and we're certainly not going to pay you more money than we pay to the families of military men and women who die in combat for this country. And that's why I think you see Biden's numbers in the 30s and Kamala's numbers in the 20s, because, again, even those people on the left would look at something like that and say, just again, to use our show, common sense. How common sense can we say to people that broke the law, we're going to pay you because you broke the law, and we're going to pay you more than we pay the families of our military who have fallen in battle to protect our country? And that's why I think you have this whole administration going off the rails at this point. It's just gone so far to the left that even the left, in some cases, I mean, there's quite a few on the left that think it's great. The Biden's line, which was hilarious to me, was he said, well, that's, initially he kind of poo-pooed it and he laughed it off. Then when he was pressed on it, because it was like one of these things, the middle of the night things, and then he said, well, that's the Justice Department that's taking care of that. Well, last time I checked, you're the one that put Merrick Garland in there. You're the one that put the deputy U.S. attorneys in there. It's your baby. And again, I just think that this is going to be one of those things that when people come to I don't think they quite fully understand it yet, but when they come to fully understand it and be aware of it, it's going to be one of those things for polling numbers you're going to see in the 70s, easily in the 70s, of opposition to that. That's my prediction on it.
No, I agree with you. I think once this becomes a little bit more common knowledge, and people start seeing it at the 6 o'clock news, as opposed to the Sunday political shows or something you get to read in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal. Once this becomes people become more aware of it, especially with how expensive everything is and how difficult it is for so many people. The homeless situation, there's jobs out there, but it's what kind of jobs are available for folks, and now you're providing this type of money and the amount of money. I think there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to be really upset. I mean, I'm getting more conversations with friends about who commute over to work, and because they can't afford to live within the city, and so they've got to drive a little bit farther out, and they talk about their gas prices and how expensive it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so all that is going to come, I think, to a hedge, and it's going to be bad news. I think it's going to be difficult for Biden and Kamala. If nothing changes, I mean, they're going to need some sort of big win to come in the beginning of the year in order for individuals to say, okay, maybe we should keep this party in office. If not, then expect Republicans to win back Congress, and make the life more difficult over for this president.
You just said something fascinating. They need a big win in the early part of the year. You know what their big win is? They're looking at right now is the social infrastructure bill. Last week, thanks to 13 Republicans, and I still don't understand why they did this. Voting with the Democrats, they passed a $1 trillion infrastructure bill, which we'll talk about in a second. But the next, and the reason that they were able to garner the votes to pass that is because they said the moderate Democrats promised the AOC crowd that the AOC's social infrastructure bill would get passed. And so, there was that trade-off. So that's the next thing in the pipeline is a social reform bill that I think will have most people's heads blowing off. But, this past year we spent another $1 trillion for infrastructure, and everybody loves infrastructure. Don't forget we have racist bridges, according to our U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary. He says bridges. There are some bridges that are racist because they were built so low they didn't allow school buses to go underneath them. It's pretty amazing to me that that's kind of a concept that people have. But we spent a trillion. We authorized $1 trillion. The president's going to sign the bill. And like everything else, I remember I remember in school, back in school, they used to do how a bill becomes a law. You remember that?
Uh,
And it was the funniest. Now that we're older, it was like the funniest damn thing when you look at it, and no one ever says read the bill. So the infrastructure bill, there's some stuff there that you would expect. The lion's share of it, 110 billion, is roads and bridges. What is it? Roads, bridges, and highways. Of that amount, almost 50% of that 110 billion is devoted to bridges. So there's stuff like that which you would expect. There's other stuff. There's $1 billion for planning street guides or street grids so that parks that are in different sides of the road can connect. There's I think 7.5 billion to put up more electric vehicle charging stations. There's one thing I heard this morning that's in there, which is to pay for auto manufacturers to install devices in your automobile starting, I think, in 2026 that would automatically register your blood alcohol level when you get in the car. And if it's above a certain level, the car would not start. Now, I don't know how, maybe that's infrastructure so you don't smash into a wall or something. I don't know, but, it makes you wonder. But the thing that struck me is, so I added up all this stuff, right? And it came out to like $530 billion. Not a small amount of money.
right.
But the bill is $1 trillion.
So where's the
So
rest of the money
I'm
going?
trying to figure that out. We're going to search this out because I cannot find. And what's funny is you read the stories, all the news stories, and they have all the listings of the things. 65 billion for the broadband internet, 65 billion to improve the reliability of the electric grid, part of which is to create clean hydrogen energy. Boom. Other things like cleaning industrial waste sites.
Right.
50 billion. I love this one. 50 billion for weatherization, whatever that means, and climate resiliency.
Well, Mike, let's do this. Let's look through Let's look through this piece of legislation. Let's get together this week again, and what we'll do is we'll put up in our comment section how the numbers, what they add up to. I really want to go and and look at that section you talked about with the with vehicles, whether it's a charging station, this other the highway to make it for cleaner vehicles, but also anything that they're looking to put into the vehicles, because like in California, they're looking to put a device in the vehicles to see how much miles you drive, because they want to go through a vehicle mileage tax. And I really want to go look through some of those items and really put it out for the folks to look at, because this thing, the absurdity of this thing is just beyond me.
I've asked a couple of people to get me an analysis of it, and once we get it, we'll condense it, put it up on our website, and we'll talk about it on the next episode. But I just did again the common sense thing. Okay, it's $1 trillion. What's it for? I'm not even going to argue what it's for. Whether or not it's true infrastructure or not. What's done is done. But the thing you always ask is what else in these big bills? What else is in there that makes no sense to be there? And that's why when it came out to 530 billion, it's like, okay, where's the other 400 and change go? So
Right.
we're gonna try and find that out.
Well, let's do this. Let's end this episode right here at this point with the infrastructure.
Well,
Hmm?
I do want to say, because you had mentioned about California
Oh yeah.
and what is it, an identity thing in the car to tell you where you are?
There is a vehicle. So what they've done is in California, they're testing it out right now. It's a device that basically tracks how many miles you've driven in your vehicle, so that they want to end up in California. They want to create a vehicle mileage tax to charge you for every mile.
Okay.
Now it becomes very difficult for people who live in rural areas or people who've got kids. that you've got to take him to school, that you've got to take him to the practices, that you've got to take him back home, that take him to the dentist, take him to the doctor, and everything else. And so
So
they're starting that program now.
it tracks your mileage, not where you are.
I am sure if it's tracking your mileage, it's tracking where you are
Well,
because
maybe we ought to put that in the limo that the governor of California rides in, so we can find out where he is.
well, he
Because
ended up, yeah, no,
he got himself a booster shot 13 or 14 days ago, and then he disappeared. I think I saw that in an episode of Veep once. So I'm a little skeptical as to what's going on there.
well, he has announced that and so on today being Tuesday, on Wednesday of this week, so tomorrow, he has announced that he's going to be in Monterey at an event, and I am sure the press is going to be asking quite a bit of questions as to, did you get a negative reaction from the booster shot? What were you doing? How does it you disappeared for all these days? And it'll be interesting to see how he responds to it because if you go online, there's all these conspiracy theories as to where he was at, and what happened with it. Did he get palsy? Did he get, I don't know? Did he get this disease, that disease? It's just there's a lot of stuff online.
He was up at his winery celebrating his win. That's probably what it was. But it does. I mean, it's so in a world now that is so interconnected that everybody knows everything.
Yeah.
For the governor of the largest state in the country to basically disappear for even when
Right.
elected leaders go on vacation, you know where they are and what they're doing.
Right.
It's extraordinarily unusual. So, and it'll be interesting if any of the press asks, so while you were gone, who was in charge?
Right. Which I think what we need to do is, well, let's get together in a couple of days. Let's do another podcast, and let's find out those answers. It'll be we can report back as to what some of the reporters asked. I can I'll call a couple of reporters, see what they're hearing. At the same time, we'll get the infrastructure because I think that in itself, those two areas there, especially the infrastructure and what's being put in vehicles, and how they're looking to figure out new ways to track us or whether we can drive our vehicle or not. I think that in itself, I mean, it seems like an invasion of privacy,
You
but
think?
at the same time, it's the what happens to the people in rural communities. So
Right.
I'd say let's leave it here
Good.
and let's get together. Let's get together this week again, Mike.
Sounds good. Thank you, Hector. Thanks everybody for joining us.